Welcome to episode 6 of the Magic Hour. I'm back from a long hiatus, really. Andrew, you've been running the show admirably and had some really interesting guests while I've been away. But I'm surprised I'm allowed back, to be honest. But thanks for having me back, and it's good to see you in the studio.
I'm very glad to have you back, Paul. Good to have somebody else help fill some of the time that on the podcast. Is good.
No, I think you've been doing a magnificent job. There's been a lot happening. Obviously I've been away doing a few different bits and pieces. Obviously I was away in the US, which feels like about 5 years ago now, but it was actually only about 5 or 6 weeks ago. So time's been fine. We've done a lot of things since then. And one of them has been the launch of our cultivated pork product, which we did recently. We've had a lot of coverage around that the listeners might have seen in terms of media coverage and those sorts of things. But the cultivated pork is obviously in addition to our cultivated lamb prototype. So both of those are minced meat products that we produced. We also did a tasting of the cultivated lamb as well, which some people don't realise. But we did a lamb tortellini. I've got that correct, yes?
That's right.
And with our pork, we did pork dumplings and pork wontons. I think those two terms are somewhat interchangeable,
and both equally delicious.
Excellent. I'm glad you think so. And look, those tastings were really key in, I guess, our development in terms of product development, particularly feedback on the products that we'd created, and really really strong validation. I feel as well. Particularly. Because all of the previous tastings we've done have all been in-house, obviously, which the feedback has been really, really good. But obviously there's a little bit of bias there as well. We're tasting our own products. So getting that external validation from those tastings, I don't know about you, I was quite nervous about it and a little bit apprehensive about it.
Absolutely. Especially when you have food critics tasting and I don't know. People have seen the online tasting that Danny Valent, who's a food critic and writes for various publications around Melbourne and has a podcast. What she did was with our pork dumplings, she didn't allow us to put the sauce on and took the skin off the dumplings. So just ate our mincemeat product on its own, which was not our intention. And her reaction was really interesting. You can look it up online through our socials if you're interested. But she said, unremarkable, tastes like pork, which was, we couldn't have asked for anything better.
Yeah, look, absolutely. The feedback from Danny from tasting, well, it's not raw, but
no, definitely
not raw. That's the wrong term. But what's the word?
Unpackaged,
standalone. I don't know. I'm losing my words here today. It's not great when you're recording a podcast, but our feedback from the cultivated pork product was was amazing, and it was really great to get that feedback. I mean, most of the people, overwhelmingly, the feedback has been positive around the cultivated lamb and the cultivated pork products that we've produced. We've had vegetarians try it. We've had vegans try it. We've had some, hardcore omnivores try it. Food critics,
even politicians.
Absolutely, yeah, and probably one of maybe a handful in the world of politicians that have tried cultivated meat, which is massive. I guess some of the questions that we have been asked have been around why have we produced a cultivated pork prototype following our cultivated lamb prototype, and I guess there's a few reasons, and purely coincidentally, in the week that we actually launched the cultivated pork prototype, there was an expose here in Australia of some of the practices in traditional animal agriculture, slaughterhouses when it comes to pig farming and producing pork from traditional means. And so without going into the graphic details of what was uncovered there from camera footage like within the slaughterhouses. It just really highlighted that there really is no ethical or humane way to produce pork products using traditional means. And so obviously Magic Valley is really focused on ethics and impact and providing consumers with a range of options in terms of the products, the meat products that they consume in an ethical and a sustainable manner. And so that was just a really stark reminder of what goes on. The other thing I guess to keep in mind around pork, which is a massive industry in Australia, is that Australia is actually a net importer of pork. Now, most people, think that Australia, produces all this food here and exports, the majority of it. But it's actually not the case with pork, which to me indicates that there's a really huge demand for pork in Australia. And it also says that, we're unable to produce enough pork to even feed the domestic population, let alone, globally what could be achieved. And most people don't realise that. I think that's, quite surprising to most people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess some of the other things to consider, around, what we're trying to do and the impact that we're having with cultivated meat is around the environment as well, and the impacts that cultivated meat can potentially have on, obviously reducing greenhouse gas emissions, using less land, less water, and all those sorts of things. And so, obviously we've got our cultivated lamb products, we've got our cultivated pork product, we've got some other ideas in the pipeline for the next products. And I guess some of the other questions that we do get asked are around the actual product itself. So, we're producing mincemeat products at the moment. I always get asked how far away are the structured products and those sorts of things. And the answer's still the same. They're still 12 to 24 months away before we even sort of start considering that in terms of the technology. Our focus will be on the mincemeat products or the unstructured products, at least initially, and for the time being. Andrew, just in terms of the tastings that we did, what was some of the other feedback that you got from people at the tastings people at the tastings who actually got to try the products?
Look, I think people were actually a little bit blown away by the historic nature of it when they sat there and realised while they were eating that the animal that the meat came from that they were eating was still running around happily in a field. It's really quite a difficult thing to get your head around, and it's not something that people are used to. And a couple of people even got a little bit emotional about it. It was
I was one of them.
A really powerful. Each time we've had a tasting, outside of Magic Valley with people who we have no idea how they're going to react. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the validation that the tastings provide is massive because, up until this point, or I guess externally, like people would see, oh, you're just, you're talking about it, but, it's not, we are talking about a new technology, but we're talking about a food product. And so people are blown away by the technology and, the potential of the technology, but when we get to, the end product and the end consumer, it's a food product and people want to see and touch and smell and taste and eat a new food product. So
they're fascinated.
Totally, yeah. And so being able to do those tastings is massive validation for, everything that we're doing. And, I think we were both blown away and overwhelmed by the positive feedback that we received. And, it wasn't like we, lined up a group of people that were, only going to give us positive feedback. We had so many independent people there, which made it even more scarier. But I think probably the harshest thing that I heard in terms of feedback, and it's not harsh at all, but it was just a bit of a difference in the firmness of the texture, and that that changes with cooking time and all those sorts of things. And everybody else that I spoke to or that gave me any feedback, the word they used was indistinguishable, which this is not a marketing campaign, but I was blown away by that.
Absolutely. Actually, the harshest feedback I heard was from someone who works in the restaurant business. and deals with a lot of food and eats a lot of food, obviously, was that the garlic in the lamb tortellini wasn't cut finely enough. And it's like, okay, look, to be completely transparent, the people we have developing our recipes are not chefs. We're a small startup company. These are scientists, research assistants, and heads of innovation that are doing the cooking for us, who are absolutely multitasking. So to me, that gives me a really strong sense of wow, this is really going to go somewhere. If we can, as amateurs, make products that overwhelmingly every single person that's tasted it has said, oh yeah, that tastes like pork or that tastes like lamb. I think the recipes that can be developed with professional chefs and food scientists is going to be quite amazing.
It's a really good observation, but I think Wendy and Jacob are going to be pretty upset with you referring to them as not chefs, not chefs and amateurs. But I think they've got some ability. Yeah,
absolutely, they have a lot of ability.
Yeah, no, look, I think you're right. As I mentioned, I was so apprehensive in terms of what the feedback was going to be, but yeah, I've just been blown away. I guess the other thing it does for us is validate, that we're on the right track. We've made progress. We've made a lot of progress, particularly in the last 6 months, and it gives us a lot of feedback around what the consumer wants, what their feedback is around composition of products and types of products that they're interested in, and a lot of feedback around aroma and flavour as well, which is really interesting because that's something that we've been working on and will continue to work on as we finalise the initial product, or the minimum viable product, or MVP as it's called. But I think the feedback around that was really crucial.
100%, and yeah. Having people, I haven't eaten meat for 8 years, so having people who eat meat every day, or eat dumplings and eat lamb pasta all the time, having them taste it was super critical. I also wanted to circle back a little bit onto when we were talking about why we were doing cultivated pork. We've done lamb. Why don't we just stick with lamb? And obviously, the plan is that, and the hope at the beginning of Magic Valley was the technology that we're developing would be applicable to many different species. And we did it with lamb, and it worked okay. So we thought, let's try pork. And I was, as a scientist, I was extremely happy that it actually worked very simply and smoothly in exactly the same way when we reprogrammed the pork cells as to what we did with the lamb cells, which was just fantastic to see that happening, and us able to really quite quickly go from the experiment to see if we could reprogram the cells to having a pork dumpling tasting with politicians and food critics, and it literally blows my mind.
Yeah, look, I probably undersell the complexity of what's involved when I'm talking to people, and you make a really good point. And obviously, from a scientific viewpoint, or from a technical viewpoint, what we've been able to achieve is nothing short of amazing. And the fact that we're able to create different products from different species using the same platform and technology, which again I'll mention that everyone keeps still asking me, I don't know why, that is FBS free, it's animal component free from the time of, following the obtaining of the initial cells. And we've been able to do that across multiple species. And obviously my grand plan when we were getting started is to be able to produce cultivated meat product from all farmed animal species, and ideally from aquatic species as well eventually. So, yeah, look, in terms of the progress of the technology, what we've done is absolutely amazing. And again, I'm going to embarrass you here a little bit as well, but the whole team, but particularly yourself and Jacob have been able to do in terms of, applying the science to this new area and be able to, produce those products. And again, I always make this sound really simple and it's really easy, but it's really easy because we've got an outstanding team. And there would only be, I'm only guessing here, but I would imagine, I could count the number of people in the world who would be able to do this on, my fingers and toes. There'd be very few people worldwide that would be able to even do this. And I know I always make it sound simple and the process is simple. I'm like, yeah, we're doing this and this and that. But the reason we're doing that is because the team is just exceptional.
Yeah, look, I think the team that's been put together is really complementary. There's a lot of things that I don't have that are in other members of the team, and vice versa. It's a good, diverse team in terms of scientific skills, in terms of ages, in terms of experiences, and I think in our next podcast we're talking to our senior bioprocess engineer VJ, whose experience is like world class.
Off the charts, yeah.
It's going to. I think you'll be blown away listening to that episode.
Yeah, so it really was a historic moment for a whole number of reasons, and you felt that in the room too when people were tasting, particularly people that hadn't eaten meat in 10, 15, 20 years. When we did the initial tasting, there was just this hush went over the room. It was just dead silent, which was. It was really quite moving to be honest, And I think one of the things I said and might have been picked up by a few people is, I used the term, what we were doing and what we were about to do and what we had produced is really remarkably unremarkable. So remarkable that we're able to, create meat products for human consumption that involve absolutely no animal slaughter, but also unremarkable because they taste exactly like what you expect them to taste. The cultivated pork tastes like pork. The cultivated lamb tastes like lamb because that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I like to leap ahead in my thinking and think back. Maybe in 30 years' time, people will be thinking, why on earth were animals used for eating directly when you can just have your animals that you can have a lovely life in a field or running wild, and take a small sample, let them go on their way.
Yep.
And everyone's getting fed.
100%. I'll look forward to that day when hopefully we get there sooner rather than later. One of the other questions, Andrew, that has been asked, because these were, quite small, exclusive type of events, because obviously, we're not able to, produce hundreds of thousands of kilos yet. There's a lot of people ask us, are we going to do more tastings and that sort of thing? And I think we do have a couple, of potential smaller events coming up throughout the remainder of the year, because just the feedback that we do get is just invaluable, from those tasting events. Anything else we've got coming up that we should mention?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're co-hosting an event called a Food Hack coming up on Thursday, May 18th. If you look up, if you just search on your favourite internet search engine for Food Hack Melbourne, you'll come across a free Eventbrite site link that will enable you to get tickets to that event. I actually think it's getting close to selling out, but if you're interested and at that event, there's we're co-hosting the event and Paul is speaking at the event. It's about the future of alternative proteins for feeding the planet as we head towards billions more people on the planet very quickly by 2050. We also have Eighth Day Foods, a company making lupin-based protein meat substitutes in the north of Melbourne, and another company called
Leaf Protein,
with Fern Ho as the CEO and founder of that company. So it should be a really fascinating night, I think. So if you're interested in alternative proteins, cultivated meat, please look up Food Hack Melbourne and come along and say hello.
Yeah, great cross promotion there, Andrew. You're an expert at this. So I don't know what's happened since I've been away, but you're obviously upskilled substantially. I think it'll be a great event. Come along. Whether you're a student, you're a foodie, you're an investor, you have a food business. Like come along, because there will be people from all different backgrounds there. With all sorts of different experiences. We'll chat about alt proteins, and there'll be a chance to meet and greet people throughout the industry, because we really want to build up the ecosystem here in Australia, but particularly here in Melbourne. Where obviously all the best companies are based.
Absolutely.
Just moving on, I guess, from that, Andrew, the other thing that people ask me about is the same. We get asked the same questions all the time. How far are we away from having products on shelves? And I guess the update with that is there's no update. It's still the same time frame as we've spoken about. With the aim of as we continue to scale up. Obtain regulatory approval, and the aim still is for end of 2024, which is what we're looking at the moment. That's obviously got the potential to move in various directions, but that's the aim at the moment. So that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, and we're working really hard into looking into all of the aspects that we need to fulfil in order to meet the regulatory requirements for a novel food product to be approved in Australia. We're looking at what's going on around the world and what's going on in Australia, and we think we're well on track to be close to those that deadlines Paul's talking about.
Again, I always make it sound really simple. I don't know why, but there's obviously a lot that goes into that, particularly around what we've been looking at. In terms of, the processes and the regulations and, what we need to do, from a food safety perspective, and making sure we're in alignment with the framework and all those sorts of things. There's actually quite a lot that goes into it, not just with the product, but the process, the environment, the lab, so many different areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know I say absolutely a lot, but we do agree on a lot of things.
Yeah, I say that too. Which you've been doing a power of work with, Andrew. So thank you for that. I guess something else that has come off the back of the tastings is we did have a number of members of the media there as well. David Swan from the Australian came down and tried the product and wrote a nice article about us in the Australian as well. We had Yahoo News there, The Guardian. As you mentioned, Danny at a later date came down, who writes in Good Food and has her own podcast, which you should check out. Who else was there?
Oh, there was that little entity called Channel 7.
Oh, yeah. Whoops. Channel 7 News, which, listeners may have seen the footage there. That was great.
They tasted it as well. And since then we've had Sky News come through. We've been talked about on various radio stations around the country.
It's been a lot of radio coverage.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
A lot of it's interesting. I think it because there's two sides to whether you support or don't support cultivated meat. I guess it creates a good radio topic for discussion, because it gets people, it polarizes people.
Yeah. It's really funny. I mean, just talking about media, even with these, some of the articles came out that the headlines of the articles would get changed. After they've been out for a while to something a little bit more controversial. Which drives a few more clicks. But anyway, that's a whole other episode of the podcast, I think.
Headlines are one thing. I do read the headlines, but don't read the comments.
Yeah, definitely stay away from the comments. I agree with that. It was really interesting because, as you mentioned, we had, a couple of the ladies from The Guardian that came down and tried the product. One was a long-time vegetarian. The other was a Omnivore, yes. Everyone always says carnivore, which is the wrong term. The term is omnivore if you eat both. Which was really interesting, to get those different perspectives from someone that had recently eaten a pork dumpling and someone who hadn't eaten pork dumplings in a long time. And that video's up
Well, you can access it through our socials.
So, yeah.
On our. I think we have an Instagram reel.
Yes.
I think that's what it's called. I'm learning.
Yes. You're all over social media. Don't pretend. So I mean, that's a really interesting one to check out. About their experience at the tasting. Obviously had Yahoo News down as well. Who did did they do a video or just the stills of the? Can't remember now.
I can't remember either.
I think maybe just the stills. Maybe they.
I feel like the Magic Valley week is about a month in real time.
Yeah.
A lot happens.
A lot has been happening. You're right. A lot has been happening. And obviously, the Channel 7 News footage, and obviously, you mentioned we did the Sky segment for Sky as well. But also, I mean, there's video of Danny Valent also tasting the pork as well, which is online and available, and you can see all her feedback on the products as well.
And then Danny, I think, went on a couple of different ABC radio stations and talked at length about the tasting, which was great.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful for her. Well, for her, in a sense, brutal honesty in terms of really trying to not taste the flavours that we're adding to it, but taste the real meat.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, her feedback has been really great, which is really good. And again, just more validation for what we're doing, because as you mentioned, none of us are food experts.
Well, I do eat a lot of food.
You do eat it. Yeah, well, we all do. You're right. We are experts in consuming. So that's all been, there's a lot of work that goes into, these events, the tasting events, not just from, the science side and the product and, production and manufacturing. And then we've obviously got the food side of things in terms of the dishes and then presentation and all those sorts of things that you have to think about. Also venue as well. We're super, super lucky to have,
John Gorilla in West Brunswick. Check it out. Joanna runs a fantastic coffee shop and business there. We highly recommend John Gorilla.
Absolutely. All times of the day, not just when we're doing cultivated meat tastings there. Get down there. Yeah, it's a great venue, great atmosphere and environment there. So, so we're super lucky to be able to go down there and then obviously, there's a bit of, work around, the media stuff that we do in terms of interviews and follow-up interviews and radio and all that sort of thing. So there's quite a lot that goes into the tasting events as well. People say, why don't you just have them more often and, you could do lots of them. It's not that easy. It's actually quite a whole event that, you have to put together from so many different aspects. And as you mentioned, we're still, a very small team, in the grand scheme of things. So everyone has to help out, which we're all super grateful for. I guess one of the other things to mention, around media attention that we, have got for the cultivated pork tastings that we've done, and I guess just media attention in general really does help raise awareness. And a lot of people ask us, how can they help? How can they? They want to help. They want to be involved, and we always say, it really helps if you, like, comment and share on our social media posts, because it really does broaden, the reach that we get, brings more attention to what we're doing and brings more awareness to what we're doing. So when we do say, can you, please help us by, liking, commenting, sharing on our social media posts, we're not fobbing you off. That's 100% the best way you can help us.
It really does help.
Absolutely. So, look, if you are particularly on Instagram, Andrew's favourite, maybe he likes TikTok a bit more, I'm not sure. But, if you're on Instagram and Facebook and all the usual social media channels, it really does help us if you, can share our content, because we do a lot of educational pieces of content around, cultivated meat in general, not just about us. So, if you're keen to help us out, that would be super. And obviously, we talk a lot about, behind the scenes with what we're doing, product development, what's happening with the team and all those sorts of things. So hopefully you get some value out of that and out of sharing that. And you can look really progressive and hip to all your friends, because I'll see you sharing Magic Valley's content.
Exactly.
Some of the other things that is really important with the media attention that we have been receiving is for us to move outside of, the typical food tech space where everyone is aware of cultivated meat. Everyone, is quite engaged with the industry, understands the process, knows that this is coming, because we can sometimes get stuck in that, echo chamber or bubble, where, particularly for me, where I'm talking to a lot of other business owners within the space, and we're just talking about the same thing all the time. And I can get caught up in, thinking that everyone knows about cultivated meat, and, every person I speak to is aware of it and knows what's going on in the industry and all that sort of thing. But that's far from the case. And so it's really great that we get, media coverage in the industry publications. There's some large, quite large, food specific or sustainability specific publications that we're in, semi-regularly, which is great, which is super, to raise our profile within the industry. But getting mainstream coverage and getting that crossover is crucial. And so we were really lucky, as you mentioned, Andrew, to get national TV news coverage from Channel 7. We've been on Channel 9 previously. To have really big publications or journalists from publications, as big as, the Australian, Guardian, Yahoo, all of that come down, really just broadens our exposure to a whole new audience, really. And they're the main audience. They're the consumers of the end product.
The meat eaters.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really crucial for us to get across to them. And as you mentioned, don't read the comments, because not everything's positive about what we're doing. There are people that have who are not as supportive about what we're doing, who are potentially I don't mean this. I don't mean to discredit anyone, but a lot of the comments we get are a little bit based on things that people have read or their understanding of the industry that just isn't true. Because a lot of the comments still now that we get are about, but you still have to use FBS and you've got to do that. It's just not true. The industry has moved a lot in the short period of time that it's been going, and our approach in particular is different to most other companies' approach, in the industry. And so, so some of those comments are a little bit frustrating when they talk about, things like that are just factually, incorrect. So, but I understand there's a large education piece, and a lot of people aren't, still, just not going to want to eat cultivated meat, and that's that's totally fine. That's their personal decision, but it does just get a little bit frustrating when, it's just factually incorrect, some of the comments.
Yeah. Ask us a question if you want, if
totally.
We can't reply to every comment on every form of social media, and especially under other. So when Channel 7 News puts out a tweet or something like that, we don't have the capacity to respond to everything. But if you send us a direct question, either publicly or through our contact via the website, we're really happy to answer legitimate, genuine questions.
Absolutely. And look, check out the FAQs on the site as well. I think we sort of answer a lot of those. We have tried to answer a lot of those, standard or regular questions that we get, that are particularly around, things like using FBS and those sorts of things. We do get a lot of the same questions. So look, maybe those commenters aren't listening to this podcast, so it'd be great if they were. But look, this applies to anyone. If you've got questions, please use the website as the first port of call, because we do have, not just the FAQ section. We've got all our podcasts on there, the blog, all of the videos that we have done, all the content that we've put out. We did you did the FAQ video questions as well that you answered. So check out that first. But if it doesn't answer your question, please feel free to reach out. I don't want this to be a widespread commentary on social media, but it's a much better approach than just randomly commenting on social media posts. Just ask the person directly if you really want to know the answer.
Exactly.
What else, Andrew? What else has been happening?
Look, I was reflecting on the Channel 7 and the fact that we were on the Channel 7 news directly after the football on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
I think I got more direct phone calls, messages via all sorts of different platforms to say, "Oh wow, saw you guys on the news." So it really makes a massive difference to getting that national mainstream coverage.
Totally, yeah. I mean, we got dozens of inquiries within minutes of that segment appearing, which was really unexpected, actually. But it just shows how many people, just the total volume of people that watch those programs. Exactly.
And look, the only thing that's really similar to that sort of response, I think, is quite recently when Georgie Purcell MP mentioned us in Victorian Parliament last week.
Yes. Georgie's just unbelievable, to be honest. So Georgie obviously attended our tasting event with her team, and they came along and tried the cultivated pork products, which was amazing, just in and of itself, and the work that Georgie has been doing, in Victorian State Parliament, not just in regards to animals, but in regards to, planet and sustainability, and people and rights and, all those sorts of things. It's just been a phenomenon to watch. And for her to come down to the tasting, as you mentioned, mention us in Parliament, asking the Innovation Minister to come down and try the products, which obviously, what we're creating is a cultivated meat product for meat eaters that can be ethically and sustainably produced. So, what better MP to get to come down?
Absolutely, yeah. Wow. We are all about innovation.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, I mean, as we're talking about, the media, so we've received so many comments as well from people that follow Georgie as well. It's from a wide variety of backgrounds. And so, super grateful to Georgie and her team for coming down and speaking about the products and trying the products as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's on our socials is Georgie and her team trying the products, some of whom had not eaten meat in a really long time.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting how government works as well, in terms of not just the mainstream media coverage, but obviously, having Georgie come down herself personally to try the products. It's really interesting how media and government play a role in public perception, and that working both ways, I guess, because getting that exposure helps increase awareness, which helps stimulate demand for a product or a service or whatever the case may be, and it obviously brings it to the attention of the government as well. And for us, that's really important. And it's probably for any new industry really, in terms of us potentially, ideally receiving some support from the government, whether that's the state government or the federal government, and whether that's in terms of infrastructure or whatever the case may be. I mean, we know, without going into the details, there's a lot of industries that are subsidised by the government, particularly in food and agriculture and those sorts of things. So getting support from the government for cultivated meat or cellular agriculture as a new industry that has so many potential benefits, whether it's around jobs and growth, every politician's favourite saying, but the economy, exports, potential exports that can come from, cellular agriculture, the benefits for the environment as well. And I talk about this all the time. We both do, around, how much we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, water usage, land usage, And so all of those issues are really public policy issues, that we're mentioning. And that's without even, touching on, food safety and security, food sovereignty and all those areas that I know you're very interested in, Andrew. So these are really all, public, health concerns. They're public policy issues, and the government should be involved. Now, what that looks like, certainly open to that conversation, and the conversations that we have been, having, around, what that looks like, whether it's financial, whether it's infrastructure or whatever. But it's for the greater good. Regulatory, yes, yeah, exactly. And so, government does have a role to play here in our industry. And we would love to see those conversations progress because it just makes sense for them to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I put this on some of my social media, Magic Valley social media channels and my social media channels, that absolutely super happy to answer any question from any MP from any jurisdiction in Australia that wants to either contact us or come down and see us. And transparency is we're 100% want to be as transparent as we can be and let people know what we are doing. So if you're an MP and you're listening to this, send us a message.
Absolutely. And I think the key thing you mentioned there is transparency. Like, we're super transparent about the process and what we're doing. And I think it needs to be, because people need to know, what they're eating and how it's produced. And not only that, you can then much more easily articulate the benefits of the product as well, whether that's at the product level or the climate change level and animals and all those sorts of things. So yeah, if you're curious, please reach out. We're happy to engage in those conversations. What else, Andrew?
Look, I think we're coming to the end of the time we have in the podcast studio, so we might need to wrap this one up fairly quickly. But I think just reflecting on the last few weeks, it's always a bit of a roller coaster, but it's been a really exciting part of the roller coaster with all the tastings, the media attention, the political attention, and just the general feedback from my circle and my networks is, wow, you guys are doing a lot. And
as you mentioned, there's so much going on. It really is a huge roller coaster, and it's easy to forget the wins that you have along the way. And how much progress we have made. We've got our cultivated lamb prototype, we've got our cultivated pork prototype. There's a whole lot of other technical things that we've done that we haven't spoken about that have been massive advances in terms of what we're doing. And it's a really interesting time for the industry as a whole. Cultivated meat industry as a whole. We know there's challenges throughout the industry, whether that relates to other companies, tech development, or the funding environment, which is difficult for everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. I had a terrible frog in my throat today. I don't know if that's a vegan saying. Anyway, you can cut that out, Ella. So I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, so I think the progress we've made has been fantastic. I think sometimes we do need to stop and look at where we began and where we are now and realise, wow, we've actually come a long way, and we've still got a long way to go, but we're moving, and I'm excited about what's coming next.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what we've been able to achieve, particularly in the last 6 months, particularly as the team has built up as well. What we've been able to do in that time, it's been nothing short of amazing in terms of the progress that we've made. And as you mentioned, we've still got a long way to go. There's still a lot of challenges, but it's important for us to celebrate those wins. As you mentioned, having the tasting, having all those people come down for the tasting, from just interested parties to journalists, to food critics, to politicians. That's massive. And again, just to for Georgie Purcell to mention us in Victorian State Parliament, which will be there forever and a day in Hansard, and all those sorts of things is just nothing short of amazing.
It's fabulous. Yeah. No. Thanks, Paul. I think that was a really great episode just for us for me to listen to reflect on what we've been doing. And I'm also, you talked about challenges and the team, and in our next podcast episode, we're talking to Dr. Vijay Kumar, and he's going to talk a lot about how we're going to meet some of the scaling up challenges as a senior bioprocess engineer with some really fabulous experience at cultivated meat companies around the world. So please tune in for that one. And as always, if you're looking for information on Magic Valley, we're at www.magicvalley.com.au. You can find us you can listen to the podcasts on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcast app. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. And we have recently started YouTube Shorts, which are a nice way to get out some of the information that Paul has been talking about in this episode. So thank you very much for listening to the Magic Hour today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Paul.